Welcome to the Kind of Intentional podcast. Life gets full fast and it's easy to drift from the life that you actually want to build. Each episode, we're going to take on one real life topic, share honest stories, and pull out practical ideas you can actually use. These episodes are going to be short, they're going to be focused and intentional because your time matters, and so does the life you're building. I'm your host, Tom McCalsey, and I'm here with my co-host, Danielle Andrew.
What's up?
Fun fact, Danielle is a cat person and I'm a dog person. One of us is right and one of us is way off base. I'll let you make the decision.
Ponder.
On that one. So what are we going to talk about today, Danielle?
We are going to talk about how we don't have a time problem.
What does that mean?
Have you ever just said, I don't have enough time, but you seem to have plenty of downtime when you're sitting on the couch scrolling your phone or avoiding the pile of laundry that has to be done?
Yeah, well, there's so many episodes to watch on Netflix and everything else there. And so I think is that kind of thought, like we just need more than 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I've said that so many times. Like if I just had 2 more hours in the day, you know, these things would get done. But the fact of the matter is I would find something else to distract me from getting that thing done or whatever, that series of things done. And having more time is not going to solve my problem.
No, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like having more time isn't really the answer there. We certainly can't make more time. I used to think I needed just better time management. Like if I was just better with my time and I could allocate it better, then I was going to do better. But really what I realized is I actually need to make better decisions. And some of that's coming from pre-deciding what I'm going to spend my time on as well. And so this episode is not about productivity hacks or anything like that. You know, what we really want to go through is like, where does our time and our attention actually go? How do some of these competing priorities take away from these things? And then how can we make better decisions so that we have more breathing room?
Yeah. So I think we need to unpack what I'm too busy means because, you know, I think it's kind of complex.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think the word busy to me just sometimes it comes across as so negative. You know, sometimes I'm walking through church and somebody's like, how was your week? And you're like, oh, it was so busy. And to me, when I hear that from people, it's almost like I don't have time. I don't have capacity for you. And, you know, typically when I think about like, oh, it was so busy, it was overwhelmed, or you're just trying to keep your head above water. You know, sometimes that's just the kind of context that we give each other all the time is like, my weeks are so busy.
Yeah. And, you know, having a full calendar, having something every night of the week doesn't mean that you're fulfilled in your life. You know, you could have something every night of the week and it, you know, all of those things were great things. You went to your kids' basketball practice, you went to church, you had small group, you went out to dinner with friends, like all of those things are great. But having a full calendar doesn't mean that, you know, everything that we're doing is meaningful.
Yeah. And I think the strong part of that too is all those competing priorities just mentally drain us. They're just exhausting. And sometimes we get to the end of the week and we're unable to actually explain what actually was accomplished this week. I mean, it was one of those things where we just get through this draining process. It's like, okay, what did I spend my week on this week? And it's just so difficult to kind of see.
I think that's a great point. Like, even if we were just mentally like asking ourselves that, what did I spend my time on this week? Like even just being intentional about thinking about that question. Because I think we would all probably be able to come up with a way that we did not use our time effectively this week, or we didn't, or we prioritized something that, you know, really isn't a priority.
So I think what we're really talking through and we're thinking through everything, can feel so weighty in that regard. And so sometimes it's when our priorities aren't defined, you know, we always get caught off on the urgency, or the distractions and everything else.
Or the notifications on our phone.
Yeah, for sure. And so one thing that we started to think through is like, focus is actually really a decision that we need to make, right? I mean, so I think that's one of those things where it's like, it's not necessarily something that any of us are born with or have the ability to. It's just something that we almost have to develop with discipline, right?
Yeah. I think it just comes down to, at least for me, you know, oftentimes it's just, I'm saying yes to too much.
Yeah.
And, you know, there comes a point, and I think, you know, the older I get, the more I realize this, that, you know, everything you're saying yes to, you're saying no to something else.
100%.
And so if you're saying yes to, you know, reading a book, then you're saying no to engaging with your family.
Right.
That doesn't mean that reading a book is bad. I love to read. I read all day long, but you are ultimately saying no to something else. And so, I think it's just in society now, busy is like almost like a trophy. Like I'm so the busier you are, the better you are, or the more you're managing, you're just I could never do that. So I just think that we're oftentimes, for lack of a better phrase, we're guilted into saying yes because we feel like we don't want to let anyone down, but ultimately we're saying yes to too much.
Yeah, for sure. And so, and some of those things are, we just need clarity around our decision making. So, one of the things that we talk about a lot is clarity creates capacity. When you say yes in that moment, is because a lot of times you haven't been able to think through where your focus really needs to be. Like, what is your priority? And so in that moment, you already have decision fatigue through the day. You've already made 30 decisions or 50 decisions through the day, and you just feel like there's so much weight. And it's easier most times to say yes in the moment than it is to like say no and kind of explain why you do that. And so one of the things that we're really talking about and thinking through there is like, how do we set aside intentional time to start to clarify what is our priority, so that way we can make sure that when that moment comes, when we do have the request, that we can clearly say no, because we know what we're saying no to. It's not one of our priorities, where we have something else that we know that we want to spend more time on.
Right.
Go ahead.
How do we get this down though? Like, how do we get out of this cycle of we're too busy, but I'm still going to sit on my phone? Because I'm so guilty of that. I have a million things to do, but I'm choosing to sit and scroll Instagram Reels right now, or I'm choosing to, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So how do we break that cycle?
Yeah, I think one of the things I talk about this a lot with people is like, our phones are really addicting. There's so much dopamine that we get from scrolling Instagram, or, the endless pages of Amazon, and just looking at all the things that we possibly could have. And sometimes it's because our phones are so addicting. I mean, they're physically programmed with the algorithms to be addicting, that we lose track of how much time we're really spending on it. And so one of those things that we can do that's a really easy step is, everybody's phone has the ability to set timers. And so, sometimes as adults, when I talk to adults about that, they're like, well, I have a timer for my child's phone, but I've never considered that for my own phone.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we really need to think through is like, how much time do we really want to spend there? And you cannot solve for these challenges if we don't really have a definition of them.
Right. It's like we're more aware of protecting our kids' time than we are of protecting our own time.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that's because we almost give ourselves that permission when we get home after an exhausting day to say, hey, we can sit here and scroll.
I worked so hard today. I earned this couch
time.
rot.
I just need the ability to do this for myself and see this for myself. And I think that's, fair and true to some
I feel
degree.
attacked, to be completely honest.
I'm making eye contact with you for sure.
I definitely earned that couch rot. Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about.
So one of the things is, again, if we're going back to clarity creates capacity, one of the things that I've done, which was a huge game changer for me, is just set content limits on my phone. And so I'm not an anti-social media person. I'm not an anti-phone person and the connectivity on there. But when you really think through the time that you're given every single day, how much is enough? And I think sometimes when you do set that content limit for Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, whatever that you're going to, instead of reading every single comment under every single post and being irate about it or commenting on it, you just focus on the things that you actually want to see, and you get the updates from school, you get the updates from friends, and you don't read all the comments that you don't need to. And you'd be amazed as to how quickly, a content limit of 15 minutes or 30 minutes can go by, and how much more time you get in your day. Now, that doesn't mean you can't unlock it if you want to go back to it and you want to kind of do it, but now you've pre-decided to say, hey, I'm going to only spend 15 minutes. I'm only going to spend 30 minutes a day on this. You've pre-decided that. And then at that moment, if you truly want to go back to it, unlock the phone and continue to do it. But
so what you're saying is you need to be kind of intentional.
So yeah, so spending a little bit of time in understanding what your priorities are and like what that actually looks like is a decision that we all need to make, so we can't do it in the moment when you come home from work and you want to couch rot. That's not the time to say, well, I only want to spend 15 minutes. You do not have the capacity at that point in time to say, hey, my priorities are X. And so, yeah, you're 100% right. I think what we really need to do is some practical steps to think through this is write down your 3 priorities. right? Not to think through them, not to verbalize them to your spouse or anybody else, but to physically write them down. That doesn't mean they have to be necessarily on paper, but write them down in a space that you can go back to and you can kind of keep building on them. And one of the things that I really like to do when we understand our priorities, how does that look like when we show up on a daily basis?
Right.
So sometimes I think we can say, like, oh, my kids are my priority. And you think, okay, like, what does that look like on a daily basis?
What are you doing
to make them your priority?
Yeah.
And so, and then you could break it down even more then, so one of those things when you get home from work, and I totally agree, it's an exhausting experience sometimes to do knowledge work, but when you come home and your kids want your time and attention, they've been with their, their school friends or they've been with their teachers all day. Well, how do you show up in that moment?
Yeah.
When they need you and they want you?
And I think that's so hard. I think, anyone can relate to that. You just feel like someone constantly needs something of me. There's no reprieve to that. And so I think everybody can relate to that.
Yeah. So 100%. So then once we know what our priorities are, or we've written them down, I've broken mine down into the hours. Like, what does it look like in the morning? What does it look like in the evening? I have a specific routine that I really, really enjoy now, being a couple years into it, of setting my phone aside, having the do not disturb on. It's really kind of reset my approach in the mornings and the evenings. But before you can even do that, if you're new to this concept, we have our priorities down. Look at where your time actually goes. Our phones are fantastic because they have the ability to track our time. What apps are you actually using? How much time are you using every day?
Yeah, that's humbling.
I know. Isn't it fun? And so, one of the
It's my favorite iPhone feature.
to track your screen time.
When that notification pops up and tells me how much I've been on my phone this week.
Yeah, it's great.
Whoops.
Yep. Whoops. There goes a lot of my hours. And so I was just talking to my wife when we were walking last night, and I've been trying desperately to get below 2 hours and 30 minutes a day average. And I did 2 weeks in a row and way over it this week. But it's one of those things where you actually, when you know where your time goes, it helps you to start to set up the intentional time, be kind of intentional with what you're going to spend it on, because then you can maximize it when you do use it.
Yeah.
So when you know when your time goes, identify just one thing that you can eliminate. If you're spending an hour and a half on social media a day, cut it in half to 45 minutes. I mean,
Right.
You would think about how long 45 minutes of scrolling really is. Just try at the beginning to cut it by 40, cut it in half. Maybe cut it just down to an hour. Just see what that does and see what happens when you remove or reduce one thing, in your life, and see how much more capacity that has for you.
And I think too, this is just something for me that I'm just constantly aware of and constantly working on. We're going to have weeks where we're on our phones way more than we had the previous week. And so it's not to be like, well, I only do this much and you do this much. We're all doing this. This is about all of us, and how do, we continue to find joy in this life when we're continuously thrown content and other people's problems, and we're just absorbing, all of this. It's all of us.
Yeah, 100%. So, and this isn't to come across as like we have the answers, we're figuring this out. I mean, Danielle's right. I mean, I certainly struggle. She certainly struggles as we're working through this. This is not a goal about cramming more into our lives. This is about becoming more intentional with the life you already have. It's about eliminating some of those things that are distracting you. It's about just taking enough time to pause and calibrate, to look and actually see where our time's going. So that way we can just spend a little bit more the way that we actually want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully this was a great episode. We'll kind of continue to keep diving into it, but certainly as we kind of continue down this path, we hope everybody will subscribe, continue to listen to these things, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.